Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. Very awesome Romo Sapiens out there. Some that I got to meet this weekend as well, which I'm super stoked to talk about. It's another edition of the Rome Show here on Monday, September 16th. I'll be taking you all the way till the 2 o'clock hour here at Hamilton Radio Channel 2 and HamiltonRadio.net. Super special. Hey, Rube, can we cut the music in the background? Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Although I do like bumping to the beats in the background. I have a very special guest in studio with me today, so I want to hear everything he has to say on a multitude of topics. But Mr. Rocky Romanella, both my father, the sponsor of this show, and the author of Tighten the Lug Nuts, which we talk about every week.
It's a pleasure to be here, Andrew Romanella.
We figured at some point, since you've helped us so much on this show, that we had to get you in studio so you could talk to us for the full hour.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed being here. I've loved the conversation that you've had so far and the guests that you've had, and so it's exciting to be here with you.
Well, I want to do a little bit of a recap on all those guests. Right before I do that, though, I remind you to get me on Twitter at CoachRomo24. If you have anything to write into my father, or potentially, just potentially, we might have a special guest call in, so we'll see if that happens as well. Go on the Instagram at CoachRomo24 as well, or at Wide World of Rome. You can get it on either one. But go over there and shoot us a comment on the Facebook as well. You can see we're live on Facebook, and you can time into the show. And, of course, lastly, Dad, and I've been trying to get people to do this, so I hope having you here today will help. You can call the show. You can be this special guest on the show any given day, including today, 609-807-2492, and you can get your voice heard just like we're getting our voice heard.
And we'll answer any questions.
Any questions.
We'll tell you what we know, tell you what we don't know, but if we can't tell you, it means we got to kill you.
And I'm learning that I don't know a lot, but that means there's learning happening. So we wanted to do a show recap, Dad, for Straight Off the Rome, and I think that we've done a pretty good job on the Rome Show, getting a really good wide range of guests. And the first person it started with was Nikki Jensen, who's somebody that you know very well, and somebody that you had worked with in the past. And I think she came on here and she brought a lot of good insight to the people.
Well, I think Nikki does a great job with that holistic approach and how important mind, body, spirit is, as not only as a leader but as a person. So I think she did a very nice job. And, you know, we talk a lot about sports and what a impact sports has been in all of our lives and how important it is. But not everyone is a sports person. And so I think what's nice about looking at it from a holistic perspective, as a business leader, you may not be into sports, but it's still important for you to understand your mind, body, spirit, you know, the things that you eat and how they impact you. So I think Nikki did a great job on your behalf and the audience's behalf in kind of tying that together.
And I found it really interesting how important the nutrients you put in your body, she felt, resulted in how your mind operated. And it's one of those things you never really put together until somebody kind of explains the effects of both on the body.
You know, if you think about it, in business, you know, you have processes, and especially when you're working with complicated systems, and your body's a simple but complicated system, right? It really is.
True.
And it's a miracle, you know, the way our bodies work. And so the way you feed the body and the way you take care of your body is so important for the way you're going to feel and act, and you know, and I think that's so important. So Nikki did a great job there.
And what was super cool about Nikki's interview was the following show, we were able to have Dana Cavaglia on, who kind of took the mind, body, spirit thing to the next level because he was a professional trainer in Major League Baseball, strength and conditioning coach, and he was able to talk about, okay, now you put great things in your body, but how do you better your body physically and your mind while you're working your body physically?
Absolutely, but it's always cool when you meet people that say they know
Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera.
Man, that's pretty cool, you know. So you got to admit that's pretty. You know, I'm sitting there listening, and I know you've talked a lot about him, and he's such a great guy to have one-on-one conversations with. But if you think about it, the thing that really resonated with me as I was listening to the interview was, you know, all of us have different roles and responsibilities. I mean, you know, I know during the time I was CEO, you know, people always kind of look at you, but you're a person like everybody else, just different responsibilities. You know, on a team, there's not one person, and of course we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But there's no individuals on a team, and so I think that it was nice to hear him talk about those professionals and how they're just like us. They're concerned about their performance. They're concerned about the way they train, how they take care of themselves, and how do they recover from injuries? And so I think that it was nice to hear that they're good people that work hard.
100%. And I think it's also pretty cool to your original point that you can say, hey, Dana, how'd you decide to write a book? Oh, well, I was sitting in Alex Rodriguez's apartment. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, because that's normal for the rest of us to be able
That's
to
right.
relate
Yeah,
to.
I was watching him on TV, and I decided to write a book.
But the truth is, and since this is straight off the Rome, I feel like I can relate. The part of this that relates so much to me is me trying to get that out of my student athletes and them understanding that we don't just talk about baseball. We don't just talk about those things. We talk about bettering our body in the weight room and bettering our body from a work ethic standpoint. And we have to be able to put that effort into everything. So for him to be able to come on, and I made a bunch of my players listen to the interview too, because when he talks about relating it to Derek Jeter and how Derek Jeter came in, same process. Every single day. You didn't know if he won, if he lost, if it was the day after the World Series, if it was the first day of the season. Derek Jeter's process was the same every day. And I found that the most interesting because, yeah, it's about weightlifting. Yeah, it's about strengthening. But no, it's not really. It's about what Nikki talked about, which is almost that holistic approach to it, which is good for that individual that makes him successful over his or her career.
I think that's so true. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that it all comes down to, and I think we place a lot on this, and we think it has to be an individual or a special person that does this, but all of us are inspiring people in our own way. And you just never know what's that thing that's going to happen that inspires people. Obviously, Dana did a great job inspiring them as professional athletes to take their training. Nikki, is inspiring people with the way they eat and the way they train and the way they think about things. And I think that you just never know when that inspiration is going to happen. Today, I was watching the first show of Mel Robbins, of course, or Jean Marie, your sister, Nicole. I always go in order, so Jean Marie's always first, so she's the oldest. But Nicole is producing a supervisor on the Mel Robbins show, and of course Mel has a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there were individuals on the show who, you think they go through these dramatic things that happen, but it's a small inspiration like that. You hear that rule, or like you meet someone or a coach inspires you. You think about how, the coaches that you had at the gunnery, how Coach Trundy, just something he said clicked.
Yeah.
And so I think inspiration is so important. And I think these are people that inspired some world-class individuals, but we all inspire people with the way we conduct ourselves, the simple hello, thank you, those kind of things. So I think about that a lot, that we all have an opportunity to be inspiring.
And if you want to be inspired, go to 360managementservices. That's the number 360managementservices.com.
That's the technical term. What he just did is called sucking up.
It's true, though, because that is part of what you do, though, and before we get into Rob and Bill Winters to finish off the recap, I think it's something cool that you can touch on, that you have the opportunity to stand on a stage or to write a book or to be able to speak one-on-one with people at a book signing or whatever it is, to inspire them, one, to be better leaders, but two, just in general, to wake up every day and be pumped to do what they're doing.
Well, I think it starts with being a good person, and I think that's where it all begins. And I think sometimes we get too hung up on titles. It's not about whether you're a keynote speaker or a CEO. I think it starts with being a good person, being true to yourself. Grandpa used to always say to me, it's what you do when no one's watching that counts. And I remember saying to him one time, hey, Dad, you just kind of messed it up. You kind of ruined it for us there. No one was watching. That was the good part. Of course, he said there's always two people watching, a man upstairs and a person looking in the mirror. And I think you always have to be true to yourself. Did you do the best job you can? The results may not always have been what you wanted or hoped for, but you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I did the best I could. I was true to myself, and I did the best job I could. And I think it starts there. And then I think this concept of legacy. Did you leave things a little better than you found them? And for me, I met some wonderful people along my career, great family we were blessed with. No one more inspiring than your mom with some of the things that she's talked to me about over the course of my life, our lives together. But I think it's those simple, inspirational kinds of things. And then you want to give back. For me, speaking is a chance to give back a little bit and talk about some of the things I learned along the way. And if it helps someone along the way, that's a pretty cool feeling.
I agree, because I think that's why I coach. And I know you know this, but I think the people listening, to put the time and effort into coaching is the opportunity to affect people and to in this example, get young men prepared for life after schooling ends. And I think that's a pretty cool opportunity. And I mean, we use your teachings all the time.
Yeah.
And they might hear in a minute from John Wooden, the people that are listening to the show, who is somebody that I know you touch on a lot in your career and even in your book.
Well, and I think that concept of it's not about a title. We're all leaders at one time or another. I go back to, of course, Jean Marie is an elementary ed teacher. to me, some of the greatest leaders are teachers. And how I get to that, and I believe it so firmly, is the fact that if we were sitting at a conference, you and I said to everyone at the conference, hey, who's the who is the the head of the board of education, or who's the the local representative, they probably couldn't answer that question. But if I said to them, who's that teacher that made a difference in your life, everybody stops,
yeah.
right? You can think about it,
Absolutely.
right? Everybody stops and says, oh, fifth grade, Mr. So-and-so, or sixth grade, Mrs. So-and-so. So by that extension, they're a leader because they made a difference in someone's life.
100%. I only hope to be that person, that example for somebody. I believe in a few minutes, if not very shortly, we're going to be joined by a special caller, Kurt Flume from the FDNY. Before we jump on with Kurt, who I'm hoping can stay on, doesn't have to go anywhere before we get a chance to talk to him, Rob DeToma called in here, as well as Bill Winters, and talked a lot about what you just spoke on. And we're going to talk a little bit to Kurt about teamwork, but both of them seem to touch on the importance of being on a team as to helping them improve upon those areas of leadership and affecting change, and even affecting change in their own lives.
Well, it's funny. I believe so strongly and so firmly that I was the greatest recipient of all of the people that I worked with. I mean, it's nice that they say, oh, I learned so much from you, or I enjoyed working for you, and that's certainly a wonderful feeling. But they really taught me more than I probably taught them, right? Because it's how they reacted to things. It's how they took the learning. It's how they took those conversations. And not all the conversations, as you can imagine, were pleasant, because sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations. Hey, we're not on plan. We need to move forward. Or you're not, in your world, hey, you know what? You can't go 0 for 15 anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, or you got to have a better approach at the plate. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't be. So I think that those are difficult conversations because everyone wants to do the best they can. But the way they handle it was my education.
Right.
Right. Because I learned from them. I learned from how, you learned watching Coach Trundy handle adversity. How did he handle a losing streak? And those are some of the best lessons. And I think both of them talked a lot about how teamwork's so important, but inside that teamwork, they're training and teaching, but they're also learning from those individuals in their care.
And I think you always have to learn, and I think that's the importance of being on a team. And I want everyone to go back, if they have a chance, over the course of the week, before the next Rome show on September 23rd, and watch some of those past interviews. I think you're going to learn a lot. All four great interviewees and people that I think you can learn a lot from. And without further ado, and I know you're pumped about this, Dad, because I know you know him personally. I want to welcome in FDNY. Yeah, you're laughing. I want to welcome in FDNY firefighter and dear friend, avid Mets fan, Mr. Kurt Flume, to the Rome Show. Kurt, thanks for joining us today, man.
Hey, what's going on, Andrew? How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. As you know, I'm sitting next to my father, and I know he's pumped that not only is he on the show today, but he has the opportunity to talk to you, so it's a double whammy.
Hey, good to hear from you,
Mr.
Kurt.
Romanella.
Hey, good to hear from you, Kurt. How's it going? Hey, congratulations. I haven't
I'm
talked to you
doing
since
well.
I haven't talked to you since the wedding, so congrats. Hope everything's going well.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so far so good. Going great.
A married man, FDNY firefighter, and you're carving out time in your day for us, so I appreciate that. So here's the deal, Kurt. All
My
right?
pleasure. Big fan.
I appreciate that. We really do.
Yeah.
And
I am.
I know this week for the FDNY, this last week or so since September 11th, is a very trying time. But it's a time to remember those that were lost in such a tragic event in our country's history, as well as to honor the sacrifices that those heroes made. From your standpoint, real quick, Kurt, as a member of the FDNY, can you talk about the importance of honoring on that day and what that means to you and your fellow brothers and sisters?
Yeah, it's definitely obviously one of the biggest days that we have on the job, and in terms of remembering what happened in the past and honoring those that we lost that day and that we've lost since. A lot of people obviously they know the numbers and the amount of people that we lost. The FDNY was 343 that day, but since then, just from cancer related and just illnesses from that people had from the after effects, the aftermath of that day, the cleanup that happened for months after that. We've lost hundreds since that day, unfortunately, too. And, it's definitely important to remember the sacrifices that people made on that day, and being like an insider and being on the job now is a unique perspective, and it's pretty cool to work with people that were there and they also made sacrifices because the cleanup afterwards was so intense, and I can only imagine what they went through. So to kind of be an insider and get a perspective of people that were there is pretty unique. But, I don't want to take anything away from those that were actually on the job at the time and really did the heavy lifting the months after and the stuff that they went through. I can only imagine, really. So, it's definitely big. My house alone, we lost one individual that we honor on the day, and it's pretty. I don't want to say it's fun, but it's nice to see the way that we remember him on that day and the rituals that we have, that we do every day. We go to his grave site, which is in the Bronx as well, and pay our respects. So it's pretty cool to see.
It just sounds like there's such a love throughout the FDNY for firefighters that have passed and firefighters that are currently in the FDNY. So talk to us, Kurt. Explain to us why or what made you want to become a member of such an important fraternity, and I think one of those fraternities that every single person, no matter where you live, where you are, respects and trusts and loves everything that you do on a daily basis.
I'm pretty fortunate to have had I had an uncle, and my godfather was also on the job, and I had a bit of an idea of how great of an organization it was, other than just knowing, like, everyone FDNY, you hear FDNY, you know what it is and how big it is and how great it is of an organization. But I kind of had a little bit more of an insight into it from my uncle and my godfather. So, that's kind of what made me want to get involved. They were two guys I really looked up to and respected. So that's kind of what made me want to get into it. In terms of going through the process of getting on, it was pretty, it was different. It was definitely not what I kind of expected. And I was very lucky to have gotten on the job when I did. It's something that, I had a few things break my way, I feel like. So, I definitely fell into it, which is pretty cool.
Well, Kurt, your humbleness has never changed. I remember some good victories as a goaltender, and you always maintained your humbleness. So, hey, one of the things I was talking to Andrew about is, and some of you don't know, Kurt was the tremendous goalkeeper for the University of Delaware team, and now the FDNY hockey team, which has their traditional game against the NYPD. So great game there if you get a chance to support that. Go ahead. But one of the things I was talking to Andrew about, Kurt, is that for me, obviously teamwork is so important. But there's two places where I such admiration for teamwork. One is on an aircraft carrier, because you got 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier. Nobody can really talk to each other, but everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. And secondly, it's you as you get to a fire. There's so much going on. There's chaos, but yet each and every one of you knows your roles and responsibilities. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that synchronization that happens as you're going through your training, and how everyone has specific roles and responsibilities. And think about it. It's like it's a matter of life or death that each one of you trust each other enough that you're doing your job, knowing that your fellow firefighters doing theirs.
No, you said it perfectly. It really is. It is so much teamwork, and everything kind of has to correspond in the right timing in terms of getting water, opening up the door to the fire, wherever it is, apartment or building, to, getting water on the fire, to opening up windows and ventilating, or opening up the roof to ventilate. Like, everything has to work in a certain order in order for it to go as smoothly as you hope it does. And, some things are out of our control, so it doesn't obviously always go the way we want it, but what might look like chaos to an outsider watching everything happen is definitely, everyone has a role, and it's pretty special to be able to rely on the other members to know that they're going to be where they're supposed to be and coordinate when they're supposed to do it. And, fortunately, it works out more often than not. So, the training that we get is top notch, and the guys that we get to, carry everything out are the best. So.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people don't realize how much training and how specific, that whole process is. So, and like I said, you're going in believing in your teammates. So next time Andrew gets upset about a person missing a cutoff man, we got to tell him, hey, chill out there, huh?
Exactly.
I don't know. Runs are at a premium in today's baseball. We are talking to Kurt Flume, FDNY firefighter, dear friend of the Rome Show, and probably every Romanella that's listening to this show right now. Kurt, my dad mentioned that you're the goalkeeper for the FDNY hockey team. And we've had the opportunity on the Dab podcast before to talk about you playing in the game versus the NYPD at Madison Square Garden. Can you give us a little bit of insight on how much fun it is for you to play goaltender for the FDNY, but also how important that game is to both you and the NYPD?
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, kind of lucking out in terms of getting on the job. And, this is just another thing that I kind of feel very lucky to be able to be a part of. And, the fact that I grew up playing hockey and kind of had the whole team environment throughout my whole childhood and college, and then to be able to continue to play hockey on a competitive team, and even more importantly, have such an incredible game that we put together at Madison Square Garden to raise money for, all different sorts of reasons, whether it's foundations for, firefighters and police officers, their families who, maybe they lost a family member sometime over the previous year, or it's just the foundation that supports different facets of the NYPD and the FDNY. To be able to be a part of that game is just incredible. The first couple of years, I was a backup goalie, and I got to kind of see it from a different perspective and see how incredible and all the work that's done behind the scenes is just amazing. Guys that sacrifice time to put on such a great show. And then since after the first couple of years, I was able to get into the game and kind of be actually on the ice performing. And that's just, a thrill that it's really hard to match. And, everything that we do throughout the year, we play all these different games and we have practice and all that stuff. It all leads up to that one game, and we all want to win so bad, but no matter what, the cause and the money that we raise for help other organizations is just, that's what it's all about. So,
in one word, could you describe playing hockey in Madison Square Garden?
Sickening. I'm an Islanders fan.
That's funny. So you'd rather this at the Coliseum?
Yeah. It's just amazing. A sold-out crowd at the Garden, that's what you dream about growing up playing hockey, and to actually be able to be out there on the ice in front of a crowd like that, that's amazing.
Hey, Kurt, just so you know that answer was classic. I'll give you the classic one. My son sitting next to me did. So we were out in California, right, when I was out there with UPS, and so we went to a Rangers practice against the Ducks. So so here we are, and after the practice, and they were hockey players are some of the most gracious athletes with their time. So they all came over, were signing sticks and stuff. So Mike Richter goes walking by, and Andrew yells, "Hey, there's Mike Richter!" So Richter turns around, comes over, and starts signing some stuff, and he says to Andrew, "So who's your favorite goalie?" And he says, "Martin Brodeur." Like, really?
Hey, at least he's honest.
I was going to say with you. Yeah, that's true. All right, okay, good deal, man. All right,
exactly.
Man. Victor kind of looked at him.
With what you were saying, to kind of follow up with how, hockey players are so generous with their time, it is true. And, I think it's such a camaraderie that we all, no matter whether you play in the NHL or you play, high school growing up, it's a cool kind of bond. And like you said, being able to kind of, before the games, before the big game at the Garden, we bring families in that unfortunately lost loved ones over the previous year or the previous 5 years or whatever it might be. And to be able to bring them in the locker room and, like, feel like you're giving them a little bit of, making their day a little bit better is just incredible. I know a couple of years ago we lost Michael Davidson at a fire 3 days before the big game, and we had their family, his family, in the locker room last year. And it's just like, it gives you chills, meeting them and seeing how happy the kids get and all that stuff. It's so cool.
Well, Kurt, we know you're on the very busy guy, so I wanted to personally thank you for being on Andrew's show, but all you do and your service. The New York Fire Department does an outstanding job, and firefighters across the country on a daily basis, as well as NYPD and our police and law enforcement around the country. So thank you for all you do. It's an honor to call you a family member, an extended family member. So always,
my pleasure.
I always love to see you, Mr. Flume. Take care of yourself, all right? Be good, be safe.
Same here. Unfortunately, I'm going to be missing the bocce tournament this year, but it only gives me an extra year of practice.
Give me a year to practice. There you go, man.
I think Rocky and I might be we're on a 6-year losing streak, so I think we might be offering roster spots up next year if you want to take one.
I don't know. I'm a free agent every year.
That's great. Hey, listen, man, I really, really appreciate you taking out the time. I know you got to get back to work. I think you're calling us from the firehouse, so we appreciate all of it, man.
Yeah, of course. You got it. Keep up the good work.
Thanks,
Kurt.
Kurt.
Like listening to you guys, whether it's the radio or podcast or whatever. So,
all right, thanks, man.
All
Be
good.
safe. Be safe.
Let's go Mets. Hey, that was awesome to have Kurt take out some time. If it was a little fuzzy in the background, that's because Kurt was in the Bronx at his firehouse. We were trying to hopefully time that phone call up with him having or not having to go out and fight a fire. So I'm super thankful he was able to call in. And anytime you can get somebody that does what he does on the phone to just give you more insight on what they do, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really is, and it just highlights the fact that in all we do, working together works, right? It's all about the teamwork. It's about the ability to work together, work with other people, and really being able to trust each other by the way, but through your actions. So I think it's sometimes we take things like that for granted. In sports, you can see the teamwork happening, right? And so it's right in front of you. But boy, I tell you what, when you think about what they do on a daily basis, fighting fires or keeping the streets safe, patrolling as law enforcement. There's a big plan there, that's for sure.
And I think the FDNY NYPD game just becomes that much more fun because they realize that isn't life or death, that isn't that serious, and there's a lot more important things going on outside the hockey rink. And I think that's pretty cool. And it's actually kind of crazy to hear that he was the backup goalie. That's how competitive it is to play on both of those teams. He had to ride the bench
serious stuff
and earn his minutes. So
there you go.
Super cool. Before we continue on, we have a little bit. You're going to hear from, John Wooden, if not the greatest coach in NCAA basketball history. Also have a clip for you from Gino Auriemma. We're going to dive a little bit into teamwork here and kind of the importance of teamwork and getting into being a great teammate. But before we do any of it, okay? And I know he's sitting in the studio, so he can give you more insight. But everybody knows that the Rome Show is presented by 360 Management Services. You can head over to 3, that's the number, 60managementservices.com, and you could either do one of two things. You could pick up a copy of Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, or you can book the man in studio, Mr. Rocky Romanella, for your next speaking engagement. So be it a sports team, a business, or anything else. If you need that leadership advice for somebody to come in and help you out, Mr. Rocky Romanella is the man.
Well, thank you very much. That was very nice. I actually had one of my most enjoyable speaking engagements was right before you guys were in the College World Series.
Oh, at St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking.
I believe the message was build your brand that
Build
day.
your brand, that's right. And sometimes I think what happens is that 6, 7, 8 hitter, they don't realize that most of the big games were not won by the number 3, 4, or 5 hitter. Many times it's the 6, 7, 8, 9 hitter that gets the big hit, gets that walk. So every teammate's important.
Every teammate's important, and that brings us right into John Wooden.
Yes, legendary coach. By the way, I got to give you a little. The guy on the screen you'll see is Coach Wooden. The guy next to him was a much younger version of Romanella.
So we have a clip here. My father, to give you some historical context, was able to sit down what probably felt like 7 hours worth
amazing,
of John
man.
Wooden.
Amazing man.
And there's about an hour clip on YouTube of the interview from 1999, if I'm correct.
Yes.
You can go to 360managementservices.com, go over to media, hit the YouTube tab, boom, it'll be right there. And you can watch the remainder of this interview. But there's a minute in here that talks about teamwork and the importance of being a team member no matter who you are, from Coach John Wooden, and I thought it'd be great for everyone to hear. So, John Wooden and Mr. Rocky Romanella.
Coach, I think you have to get it across those under your supervision that there's a role for everyone, and you must fit your role. Now, it might not be the role that you would prefer, but it's the role that will, I think, bring best results for the group as a whole. And if the group as a whole does well, you're going to get credit. So there is a place for everyone. I've used the analogy, of my players that you're like a powerful automobile, and here maybe Alcindor, you're the powerful engine. And you down here, maybe you're just a nut that holds a wheel on. But now, which is the most important? If we lose that wheel, what good is that engine? And I used to say to him, to get a little chuckle from him, you need me too. You have to have somebody in there driving it, or you'll start running in circles. The point is that there is a role for everyone. It's difficult to get those under your supervision to accept their particular role, but that's part of what a leader should do and has to do.
Yeah, that motivation side, I think we sometimes.
And that is, Dad, and I know you were the one who asked the question to get the response, but isn't that exactly what you're talking about when you say the 7th, 8th, and 9th hitter and everybody on the team have a role?
Well, I think that's important, and it's interesting. You see what's going on in sports today. What's going on, Antonio Brown, and you pick Odell Beckham Jr. Pick somebody who, no one's above the team. The minute you start to think you're more important than the team, that's when you start to lose your ability to participate and be part of the team. And I think that's such a great, answer when he talked about that. Of course, for those of you who don't know, Lou Alcindor changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I was hoping you would say that.
And he also has he hasn't talked about it in this interview, but he did talk to me about his time with Walton, Bill Walton, who some believe may have been the greatest college basketball player of all time. And so that's a great story as well. And so what it came down to Coach Wooden was that no one was more important than the team. And that, you might have been the best player on the team, but, you're one of 5. And so you're not beating all 5 players by yourself. And so I thought it's just such a simple but profound way of talking about it. And I think that's what's so important. And the difficulty is the leader not taking that on.
Absolutely.
And there's no secrets in business. There's no secrets on the team. There's no secrets in the family, And that's, everybody notices, like, when are you going to talk to that person that's not performing? Or when are you going to talk to that teammate that's not doing their sprints or they're not coming on time? Everyone watches. Because if being good, there's no advantage of being good, most people hang out in the middle then. So I think that Coach Wooden had some just great thoughts on, and you think about some of the guests you've had and the way they've talked about their kind of expertise. To me, Coach Wooden, Coach Auriemma, they do a great job of kind of summarizing it all together.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing about both of them is they're able to get the team buy-in out of the best players that have ever played the game, and some players that you could never even know were on UCLA's championship rosters during the time he was a coach. But they all bought in the exact same way, were held to the same standards, were accountable for the exact same actions. And I think that, in his 29 years of coaching, is one of the most impressive things.
Well, he said to me once, just in a conversation, he's like, everybody knows the top 5 players on the team. But when you practice, you need 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 to play against.
It's true.
So don't think those people aren't important. I'm like, I never thought of it that way. That's
Absolutely.
a good point. It's almost like the scout team on a football team. Well, if you don't have a scout team, you're playing by yourself.
Yeah.
So you don't really know what to expect. So I think he just did a great job of making everyone feel they were valued. I think that's so important.
Absolutely, and we have a saying when we talk about building our college baseball roster, thinking about year to year, we always say, okay, if we have a 30-man roster, there's going to be 10 guys that are fully bought in. They're locked, they're loaded, everything coach says, it's gospel, they'll do it. There's going to be 10 guys that are not really that locked in. They want to be a part of the team, they're happy to be a part of the team, but they're not going to play a lot. And then there's a middle 10 guys that could swing either way.
Right.
And it's whatever 10, the top 10 or the bottom 10, is more powerful is what's going to dictate how your team is that year. Can you swing those 10 to the top 10 and they're locked in, coach's word is Bible, and they're going to go live by it? Or are they going to swing to the bottom 10 where we're just happy to be here, be a part of the team, but we don't care about getting better and aren't really bothered by not playing or not having competitive opportunities?
Oh. And you're going to have that group on the 10% bottom. No matter what you do, they're never going to be happy.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about that soccer. I always call it the soccer rule, right? 20% of the parents are going to buy the juice boxes, right? All excited. They're going to bring cookies and everything with it. 20%, 60% are going to be like, oh, if I got to buy juice boxes, I'll buy them. Then you got the 10% of it. I ain't buying nothing.
Yeah, right. Why?
Yeah, you know, it's like,
Oh,
would
you
you
were
buy
gonna
them
buy
for
it.
me? What? It's just so no matter what organization or what group of people you're looking at, you're going to have that 20% are going to be the early adopters. 60% are going to be in the middle, not sure what to do, and you got to move them over, and then there's going to be that 20%. It doesn't matter what you say or do, they're not happy.
Absolutely. And the next clip that everyone's going to hear is from Gino Auriemma, the great coach for UConn's women's basketball team for the last 34 years, entering his 35th. And Gino talks a little bit about body language in this clip and some of the principles and standards that he holds his players up to, regardless of who they are on his roster and how important it is for him in his team development. So here's Gino Auriemma talking in the 2016 NCAA tournament.
We put a huge premium on body language. And if your body language is bad, you will never get in the game. Ever. I don't care how good you are. If somebody says, well, you know, you just benched Stewie for, 35 minutes in the Memphis game a couple years ago. Yeah, I did. Oh, but that was to motivate her for the South Carolina game the following Monday. No, it wasn't. Stewie was acting like a 12-year-old. So I put her on the bench and said, sit there. It doesn't matter on our team. Now, the other coaches might say, well, you can do that because you got 3 other, All-Americans. I get that. I understand that. But I'd rather lose than watch kids play the way some kids play. I'd rather lose. And they're allowed to get away with just whatever. And they're always thinking about themselves. Me, 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 me. I didn't score, so why should I be happy? I'm not getting enough minutes. Why should I be happy? That's the world that we live in today, unfortunately. And kids check the scoreboard sometimes because they're going to get yelled at by their parents if they don't score enough points. Don't get me started. So when I look at my team, they know this. When I watch game film, I'm checking what's going on the bench. And if somebody's asleep over there, somebody doesn't care, somebody's not engaged in the game, they will never get in the game. Ever. And they know that. They know I'm not kidding.
Welcome to the stage.
And sorry about that at the end there. That is Gino Auriemma talking about his feelings on teammates.
Well, it's interesting that Coach Wooden would have been 109 years old this year. In October 14th is his birthday. So, you think about currently Coach Auriemma talking, and then you got Coach Wooden, who, arguably, you'd say, he's, kind of not being disrespectful, an old guy. But it's time tested. I mean, that's the thing that I feel is you think about these concepts, these visions, these views of things, and they stand the test of time. And it's funny, Coach Wooden has what he calls his pyramid of success. And he created that pyramid of success not for sports. He created that pyramid of success when he was a teacher. And he felt like he created it because parents would come in and I'm sure teachers out there that are listening will understand exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure Jean Marie will be nodding if she's listening, that everybody comes in and says, well, because Coach would say, well, C is an average, and average is good if as long as you're doing the best you can. And parents would say to him, well, C's not good for my child. Maybe good for somebody else's kid, but my kid's an A student, period. And what he tried to get people to understand is it's about doing the best that you can.
Yeah.
And so his pyramid of success are all those qualities which makes really a great person. It's hard work, it's enthusiasm, it's skill. And so that's why he built the pyramid of success, to highlight the parents that, look, your child may be getting a C, and he or she's doing the best they can. But look at their skills. They're good people. They're hardworking, and then at the top of his pyramid of success is competitive greatness, which he defines as being your best when your best is needed. So if you're doing the best you can in school as a student, and that gets you a C plus, but you've given everything you can, you've worked hard, you've studied, it's just that's the best you are. You should be applauding that person. And when parents would come in and say, well, that C plus may be good for that child, but not my child. And so he always felt that way. And I think that's what Gino's saying in his own way, a little bit more frankly maybe, but is that, hey, I want you to be engaged. I want you to be the best person you can be. I want you to pay attention. I want you to be engaged. And so I think that you've got two great coaches, different styles, maybe different times in their lives. But what they're really saying is be the best that you can be. Be true to yourself, right? What Grandpa used to say, you got to look in the mirror and put your head on that pillow and know you did the best job you can.
And I can relate to that to the nth degree because I'm currently, as you know this, working towards my master's. And I think that C plus is the best I can do in some of those classes. And it's not because of the effort, but it's true. And we talk to our guys about that all the time, where your success or failure on a baseball field can't be defined in one at bat. Because if you start defining baseball specifically by one at bat, you're going to be in a really bad place mentally, and that rolls over into a lot of other things in life as well.
But it's interesting. Real quick, I don't want to take up too much time here, but if you think about what Bill talked about last at the ADP, right? Think about that for a second. So I think there's a key thought in teams that sometimes gets lost. I think the best quality team you'll build is one that has individuals who work together as a team. And I think the mistake that people make sometimes is they want everyone to be the same. That's not what makes a great assembly line in an automobile factory is that every car is different on the assembly line. It's the process. Well, it's the same with teams. You want individuals who feel good about themselves. They feel like they can participate. They feel like they can be themselves, but what's in the confines of a good team.
Absolutely.
You're not looking for robots. You're not looking for everyone to be the same. And I think that's what's so important. And I think that's kind of what these coaches are talking about. You're going to be an individual. Just give me your best effort.
And do you think that is some of the reason why Bill Belichick has been so successful up in New England and why they can get people like Antonio Brown put on their roster and feel like they'll still be able to handle his personality? Because, hey, I'm going to allow you to be who you are, A, B in this example, but at the same time you have to fit into our team concepts.
Well, I think look, whether you like the Patriots or not, you got to give them credit. Mm-hmm. They know how to win, right? So, and I think what makes them special is the fact that he places his players in a position to be successful. Some coaches believe that you have to be in my system. He believes that I'm going to understand you as a player, and then we're going to alter the system to get the best out of you as individuals. Huge. That is a skill that probably 80% of the leaders don't understand. Mm-hmm. They want them to be like, this is what I want you to do.
Well, I think robots is the best word to use there.
It's sad because you go look at the strengths and skills of your best players. And then, or of all your players, I should say, not your best players. I apologize. Get the strengths and skills of all your players, and then say, okay, how am I going to put you in a position to make you the most successful you can be? And I think that's what's important. Now, when it comes to someone like Antonio Brown, they all know when they get to the Patriots, he ain't afraid to cut you.
Right, that's true.
He's not putting up with all the BS stuff.
Right.
And I think that's the other thing too. You're not more important than this team because I've won without you. I'm going to win. I'm going to win without you if you can't figure it out. I'll win with you, but I'm going to win without you because I did before. And I think that's what's so important is you never allow any one person to be more important than a team. And that's what Coach Wooden was talking about with Lou Alcindor. That, hey, look, you may be one of the greatest basketball players in college right now, but I got to tell you, you're maybe the engine without wheels. You're not going anywhere.
And before we continue the conversation on team, we remind anybody that if they want to call in and drop some of their feelings on teamwork, the importance of it, leadership, John Wooden, Gino Oriema, whatever it is, call in at 609-807-2492. Our fantastic producer, Ruben, out there said, hey, I got the phone lines cleared. I'm ready to hear some Romo Sapiens call in. All they need to do is dial the phone. We have some Romalytics for you right now before some fan interaction. So we got them both coming your way right now.
I like the Romalytics. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts of the show,
And
by
I
the way.
thought I would give Romalytics this week a John Wooden, Gino Auriemma flair.
All right, I like it.
So I wanted to give everybody the statistics on why these would be the two people that we would choose to talk about teamwork and building a great team. Well, John Wooden in 29 years as a basketball coach was 664 and 162. That's an 804 winning percentage. In that time, he compiled 16 regular season championships, 16 NCAA appearances, because back then they didn't have the conference tournaments, 12 Final Four appearances, and 10 national championships. That was the culmination of John Wooden's career. On the flip side, Gino Auriemma.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, you can.
Right now. So the thing that I was the most impressed with Coach Wooden, and it's what we mentioned when Kurt was just on, that humbleness. I asked Coach Wooden if he ever thought that would happen again. And he said no, and that's not because I was that great a coach. It was just the timing of things.
Wow.
He said, today we were the only ones on TV. We had a national audience. Everyone knew about UCLA. The humbleness that he said, it had nothing to do with me. Now, of course it did. I mean, he was a great coach. But the fact that he would do it. So when Kurt said, I got lucky or whatever, that's quality people always have that humble approach to them. So you got to admire both of them for that.
And those end up being people, like you said, relationships and being a good person is where a good leader starts.
Yes.
You want to play for that team, or you want to play for that person or work for that person.
Right, because he's another guy that doesn't think he's bigger than the game.
Absolutely.
Yep.
100%. And you understand that in all the examples. Gino Auriemma, Pops, 34 years of coaching collegiate basketball. He'll be on his 35th year this year. 1,062 wins to 139 losses.
Guys, it is amazing.
That's an 889% winning percentage. In that time, he's won he's gone 6 perfect seasons. He's had 31 NCAA appearances. He's had 20 Final Four appearances, 11 national championships, and 33 consecutive seasons over the 500 mark.
I mean, the good news for him for his family is someone else has got to start wearing the rings because he only got 10 fingers. Yeah. He's got 11 of them, so yeah.
Unless he got them fitted for his toes.
Yeah,
there's no other way
I know. That is an amazing record. I mean, because consistency is a mark of a champion. So you got, you can never take that away when someone can be that consistent.
And I wrote down a note here before we finish Romalytics for this week. Giants 2007, 2011. And it wasn't specifically for their statistics, but it was in the realm of talking about great teams, because in 2007 the Giants were 10-6 and they were in a wild card position. Mm-hmm. And in 2011 they were 9-7 and they barely won their division, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl both of those years. Chris Caney talks about it all the time. Tom Coughlin wrote about it in his book. If they weren't a great team, they would have never accomplished what they did in those 2 years.
Well, because one of the things that you always have to kind of work through is this whole concept of never letting your highs get too highs and your lows get too lows. And so when they were at those moments where they were starting 0-2, it's the team picking each other up. It gets them to that final situation. So I think that the San Francisco Giants were always like that too.
Absolutely.
Once Bochy gets in there, you're always scared of Bruce Bochy when he's in a World Series game or in a playoff game. So. But getting there is not only good coaching and a coach that can kind of take you through the difficult times. It's a team taking each other through the difficult times. So I think that's important when you look at those numbers, that even in the great teams under Coach Wooden or Auriemma or some of the great, or even
Krzyzewski or any of them.
Yeah. Well, think about the Patriots. Every year there's a period where people start to write
They question them.
Yeah, right. Okay, we can start writing the obituary now. Yeah. And that lasts like 15 minutes.
100%. It's one bad loss on like a Sunday.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're writing the obituary. And then think about the players. Gronkowski leaves. I mean, he brings in new players all the time. I mean, it's not like he's got this, the same 53 roster. So he's able to understand the strengths and weaknesses of individuals and make them perform as a team. And you got to give it to him.
And I thought about both that Giants team this weekend and that concept of next man up. You have to believe in the team, because when you see Drew Brees get hurt, when you see Ben Roethlisberger get hurt, you saw Nick Foles get hurt for Jacksonville last week, you see all these key players go down. The only way any team, and in this example, football teams, can beat that is just simply by all 60 men on the roster having been bought in the entire time and not saying, oh, I get some playing time. Let me buy in this week.
Yeah. Well, you know, when after World War II and there was the rebuilding of Japan, there was the Deming theory, right? Deming went over there, and the Deming theory of quality basically says the system will produce what the system will produce. And if you think about that, it's the system that you're in, right? So it's individuals, right, contributing inside the system. And so I'm sure that when, to your point, the next person up theory is, I'm sure Belichick brings him in and says, hey, don't, you know, like when Brady was suspended for the 4 games, right? He sat down with the quarterback and said, hey, don't try to do too much. The system will produce what the system's going to produce. Right. Have confidence, and you got to have faith in the system. And I think that's how you allow individuals, right? I mean, I think whoever takes Breeze's place is going to be have faith in the system. We're going to win these games because don't try to do too much.
Teddy Bridgewater, how about that? That's who's taking him.
That's right. And everybody thought they were nuts when he signed him. Wow, that's a good point. Yeah, last year when
Teddy
they said,
Bridgewater.
why did he sign there? Well, now look at it.
Well, and look at the weapons. Yeah, so I mean, that's a curious situation, but you're 100% right. So we have about 7 minutes left here on the Rome Show, and I think myself and my pops will probably sit here and talk to you for 70 more minutes. But the radio show only allows till 2, so I guess we'll have to deal. No,
think about how happy your mother is. We're not sitting in the kitchen.
I know we're doing this in the kitchen. Or we're saying, "Oh, the Mets, what's going on?"
We're leaving her alone. She sent us here.
Yeah, I think there's a ploy there. We'll figure that out later. So we had some fans write in.
We were definitely played.
we told the fans that we'd be talking about teamwork today, and we had some interesting write-ins. One of them, your daughter-in-law, Jen, as we call her on the Rome Square podcast, Jen Estacosta.
Okay.
She wrote in, and she said, the great part about being on a team is you get to recognize a win as a collective unit rather than an individual. And I wanted to say this one first because I think you kind of just said that exact same thing, the individual succeeding within the team concept.
Well, I think that's important, right? Because you want individuals, you want them to feel good about themselves, you know, and you want people to feel like, you know, so often when you're working in a business setting or on a team, you wonder sometimes, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And you want to be part of the solution, and you want to know that your work matters, that you bring value, and so I think that that's so important. And the other thing is I think it's, you know, you can find ways to recognize individuals as well as the entire team. So I think that's so important to be able to. And some, you know, a lot of people don't like public recognition. You know, they get embarrassed by it. So just walking up to someone at the end of the day, saying, "Hey, great job today. Thanks for all you do on behalf of our organization," or "Great job, great day today on the field," or those little things. Because if you can reward the behavior that you want to see on your team, whether it's your classroom as a teacher or, you know, in a business setting or on a sports team, you want to reward the behavior that you want them to continue to do. And that could, you know, it doesn't always have to be in front of everybody or grandstanding. It could just simply be, "Nice job today. Thanks for all you do."
And she added another message on top of that a few minutes later, because I think she kept thinking about the thought. Surprising. And it said, encouraged to push others and celebrate their achievements. And I think that's the back end of that. That's the other thing, too. And you talked a little bit about Kurt being humble before and John Wooden being humble. But isn't that part of being humble, which is being able to step away from your own successes and say, hey, congratulations, man. Let's celebrate you. Let's celebrate what you just accomplished. We might have sacrificed our personal successes, but we're super pumped for you.
Well, and you know, it's, of course, you know, I listen to the Wooden tape so many times, and whenever I get in something of a rut as a leader or as an individual, I kind of always go back and listen to it. And in that soundbite that you played, that shameless plug here that you can go back and listen to on the on our website, but he talks about you'll get the recognition as the leader. Right. So don't be afraid to applaud your people, recognize them. You'll get your recognition. Your recognition is the success that, you know, you get that from the success that your people have. So I think what she's talking about, Coach Wooden talks about that in the sense of, if you think about the clip, you'll get your success. You'll get your recognition as a leader.
And it feels really good. And as an assistant coach myself, when you do something and it's something as simple as, hey, man, nice job right there.
Yeah.
That's it. Hey, great drill right there. I love it. Awesome. Thanks, man. Move forward.
Best feeling as a coach or a leader is watching someone be successful, and you're just kind of in the background with your arms folded with that big smile like a proud dad almost, like, hey, nice job.
Yeah,
that's it.
I'm not going to lie. That's how I felt when all the freshman recruits walked on campus this year and started performing well in practice. It was like, all right. Now it kind of solidifies that was a good recruiting class. That feels really good. All right. Another write-in we had was from Nolan. Nolan's actually a former player of mine, Dad.
Oh, okay.
And he said, does throwing equipment make or break a player?
Well, what you want, I mean, think about it. You know, everything you do speaks. And so if you think about it, that speaks to your inability to control your emotions. And I know everybody gets excited about, you know, I want a player to fire up, plays with emotion. There's appropriate time and place for those kinds of things. But when you're throwing, when you take that, it's all fun. What does it call it? It's always fun in games until it gets their eye poked out. Well, when you take that too far, it's more detrimental than it is helpful. So me personally, I'm always the person who likes this. Like people that can control their emotions. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to be emotional, but you got to control it because the casualty of that could be the team's chemistry, the team, or you're showing up somebody, and that's never good.
Yeah, and we always tell our guys, you have 10 seconds after a bad at bat or an error. You can be mad at yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, you're stupid. That was dumb. Whatever. Boom. It's over. 10 seconds. Turn the page. It's a Jeff Trundyism. Clear slate and just move forward.
Yeah.
There's no need to. It's the helmet. It's not the helmet's fault.
No, and you like people with passion, so I'm not saying that you shouldn't show passion.
Right.
It's just that when you just don't know when to stop the passion.
And there's a right and a wrong way, and a right and a right time. I have one last question for you before we end the show. Harder to lead a region or a family of 4 kids?
Well, I was very fortunate to lead the family of 4 kids. Really goes to your mom, who, by the way, has always taught me. For the wrap up is the greatest lesson I learned as a leader. It was a lesson from your mom. We went out to dinner with a couple we met, and the woman says to your mom, "So who's your favorite? Who's your favorite child?" Now, of course, I took the step back and wanted to hear how mommy would answer this question. Of course, mom says, I have no favorites. They're all my favorite." Of course, your 3 other siblings would say it's you.
I would say that too.
But mom said, no, I have no favorites. They're all my favorites. And the woman said, that's impossible. One of them has to be your favorite. And she said, no, they're all my favorites. And they all feel like they're the favorite. And she says, well, how could that be? And then mommy said something that I thought was the most thoughtful, insightful thing. And I used it from that moment forward in everything I did as a leader. And I think this is probably the tip of the day. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. Now think about that. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. And that, to me, was so powerful and so thoughtful, because there are different times in your lives as kids that you needed different things from mommy. And the same with the people in your care as a leader or on your team. There's a time when you have a hitter who's in a zone, they're on a hitting streak. They don't need you to overmanage them. They don't need for you to be chirping in their ear, confusing them anymore. You're just patting them on the back saying, keep up the good work. So they're getting what they need when they need it. You've got a really good hitter who's in a bad slump, and they're taking so much batting practice their hands are bleeding. Maybe that's when you're saying to them, what you need now is let's go for a walk, let's change the scene. Hey, why don't you take a bunt?
Maybe we try a different sport now.
Yeah, get hit by a pitch. Try some different things. But the point is, each of them gets what they need when they need them. And for me, managing a large staff, if I had a controller who was very seasoned, they didn't need me to overmanage him or her. But if I had a director of sales who needed my attention, then I would spend more time. Or Jean Marie in a classroom. I'm sure there's some students that need more of her attention than others. And it's each person gets what they need when they need it. To me, was just a very thoughtful, brilliant way of approaching things. And I use that, to this day in all that I do as a manager and as a leader. So
this has been a very fun, very insightful Rome show here on September 16th. I want to thank Kurt Flume, FDNY firefighter, for calling in and giving us some insight into what he does on a daily basis. And, of course, I want to thank Rocky Romanella, a.k.a. my father, a.k.a. author of Tighten the Lug Nuts, for joining us in studio today.
Hey, my pleasure. Very proud of you. The show's been great. I mean, and you're getting better each show, so I appreciate very proud of that. I enjoy listening to it. And each book sold. The reason for the donation to the Jimmy Valvano Foundation is when I did get the opportunity to speak with Coach Wooden, and I asked him, so Coach, because we taped that interview, and then we were using it at a UPS national conference. Oh. And so those are always paid speaking engagements. And so I said to Coach Wooden, what would you like for your fee? And he said to me, no, I'm just doing you a favor. You called me up and asked me to do you a favor. So gracious. I said, well, Coach, we'd like to do something. And he goes, would you be willing to donate to the Jimmy V Foundation?
Absolutely. That's fantastic.
And so from that day forward, I've always been such an admirer of Coach Wooden, as you know, but also whenever I can donate to the Jimmy V Foundation. So for every book sold, we donate $1 to the Jimmy V Foundation, not only for the legendary coach Jimmy Valvano and all he went through in his legendary speech, but also, in honor of Coach Wooden. So appreciate the opportunity to. I hope you enjoyed the book, but more importantly, it'd be nice that with the donation go into the V Foundation and Coach Wooden.
And that's for the remainder of 2019, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So that means, hey, the holiday season.
Oh, it's a great gift.
It's a great gift. I
Great
was thinking
gift.
stocking stuffer, birthdays, hey.
And then you can find out where the title came from, which is a cool part. There's a chapter on how I got the title.
I think I'm a chapter 2, so you have to read that one as well.
Most people ask me, is that Andrew or Rocky on,
On
the
the
cover?
cover, yeah.
I always say, well, it's neither. Well, why don't you pick one? Well, who's going to tell the other one they're not on the cover? So.
So now it's easier just to do someone that looks like both of us. Listen, we will be back again next Monday, September 23rd at 1 p.m., 167 hours from now. You'll be tuning back into the Rome Show. That week with special guest Jamie Quinn. Jamie is both my boss, the head coach of the baseball program at Fairleigh Dickinson University in Florham, but also going to come on the show to talk to you about the NCAA from a different light, from the Division III light, and give you a little bit of insight on what majority of NCAA athletes go through, not the minority which you see on television. So I want you to tune into that. Until then, head over to thewideworldofrome.com. Get me on Instagram and Twitter at CoachRomo24 or at Wide World of Rome. Either one. And, of course, head over to 360managementservices.com. Dad, anything for the people before we get out of here?
Great show. Great show. The only other prouder moment I was with you was when I watched you and Rocky play the double
Second
play.
base.
Andrew was playing shortstop as a freshman, and Rocky was playing second base. It was a pretty cool moment as a dad to see his both sons in the infield turn in a double play. So,
Well, without your support, we're not here.
thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you all later. Be safe, everybody.
Andrew Romanella, Rocky Romanella, Wide World of Rome, The Rome Show, Hamilton Radio. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Looking at the lights like it's all of this for me. Everyone tonight is here, all of this for me. Hands in the air again, all of this for me. Bottles over here, all of this for me.